Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking all about the James Charles and Morphe eyeshadow palette. This is a collaboration with James Charles, who is a YouTuber here, and Morphe, which is a pretty well-known brand on YouTube and in the makeup community. I purchased this palette from Ulta. It retails for $39, and I'm going to do a look live on camera for you, and then I'm also going to be doing a bunch of comparison swatches. I'm going to compare this to the Jaclyn Hill original palette, to the Jaclyn Hill Vault, to the Dare to Create palette from last year, and a couple of others, Lunar Beauty Life's a Drag palette, and I haven't used every single shadow in this palette because, again, there's 39 shadows in this palette. So this isn't going to be like a completely thorough review of every single shade because I haven't personally worn every single shade on my eyes, but I have swatched them all multiple times. I have worn quite a few. I have done quite a few different looks, and I have a lot of thoughts that I want to share with you. Mostly I want to kind of just give you my thoughts and then show you these comparison swatches because I think that would be really helpful. So I'm going to get into my eye look. Obviously I have all my other makeup done. I'm going to start with the eyes and just kind of chat with you guys as I go on my thoughts so far on this palette. First things first, James Charles does specifically say that this palette, these shadows, specifically the pressed pigments, work best with a sticky base of some sort, so like a sticky eyeshadow primer. I did finally go in and watch his video where he talks about this palette and he gives all of his stuff. It's hard for me to get through. For some reason, something about him, just his energy, doesn't vibe with my energy. That's no shade or anything, that's just my personal preference. I don't have anything against him. I just don't personally love watching his videos, I guess. Again, nothing against him. I said in my haul video, I bought this palette not necessarily because of him, but because it reminded me of the Dare to Create palette. It could have been a collaboration with anybody. It could have been not a collaboration. I would have bought this palette no matter what because it reminded me of that one, and I loved the Dare to Create palette. That's kind of where I was at with this palette. So the primer that I find works the best, one of the primers that work the best, there's more than one. The Milani eyeshadow primer is fantastic. It's a good primer anyways, but it's perfect for this palette because it's got that sticky, tacky base that he was recommending. Let me just zoom in. Ooh, hello. Okay, so I'm going to start by priming my eyes and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this palette intimidated me. Not because of the colors or even the fact that they're like matte, bright colors. I have plenty of palettes like that. It intimidated me. This palette intimidated me because of all the drama going around it. And if you're not familiar with the drama, there have been reports of someone getting hives from this palette and staining on her eyes. The staining, I think, is not that big of a deal. Hives, that's more of a big deal, but that, again, it's just personal. Everyone's allergic to different things, you know, so but that was a really big deal when that happened, and she did a rant video on it and whatever. So there's that. And then there's the whole issue of the fact that these are pressed pigments. They're not FDA approved as eye safe. Jen Loves Reviews did a really good video on that. I will try to remember to link that in the description box if you want to watch that, but she covered a lot of the details onto what that means because even though they're not eye safe, James Charles used them on his eyes in that video. So there was a lot of confusion about that. And then the other thing there was a lot of confusion on was just the fact that we are supposed to use this a specific way, that James Charles is saying this palette only works if you use it a specific way, and I think that that is throwing a lot of people off, and I think that makes sense. So here's another issue that I have with this palette. The names are not on the palette. They came on a little plastic sheet, which is temporarily, maybe permanently misplaced. I have no idea where it is. That's a personal problem for me, but I think that the name should be printed on the palette. So I'm just going to point to the shades that I'm using. Alright, so I'm going to start with the lightest shade right here and just kind of do my brow bone. I feel like that is a good way to kind of set that area. I'm not going to set the whole lid, but I'm just going to set up here, and then that will hopefully help things blend. So like I said, I'm kind of intimidated by this palette. I feel like if I end up not liking it, people are gonna say that it's because I didn't use it right or whatever. Maybe nobody cares about what I think. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's this thing that's like, well, if you don't like it, you're not using it right. Kind of like subculture. A lot of people said that about subculture, you know? Well, if you don't like it, you're whatever. And that's intimidating because as a makeup lover and someone who likes to talk about makeup and review makeup and stuff, it's intimidating to have that concept that if you don't like something, it's your fault, you know? I'm gonna go in with this one. But I think the conclusion I've come to recently is that even if it is my fault if I end up not liking something, it's still valid information, because chances are somebody else out there is going to feel similar to how I feel. Do you know what I mean? So even if my review says I don't like this palette and somebody else says you used it totally wrong or you don't know what you're doing and I love it, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that my opinion is invalid. Does that make sense? I don't know. I could be going on a little bit of a tangent right now, but in case you couldn't tell, I don't love this palette as of right now. I don't love it and I don't hate it. It's just kind of meh to me. I don't think it's worth the hype that it's getting, but I'll get into that more later. I'm gonna go in with this shade. So something I said in my haul video, which I think I cut it out because I talked so much in that video, like how do we feel about makeup products having a specific way that we're supposed to use them, you know? And is that something that we're cool with as consumers, or is that something that is not okay? I mean, what is that? And my opinion, I mean, from James Charles' perspective and from like a YouTuber, as a YouTuber and a makeup hoarder, lover, addict, whatever you want to say, if I was creating a palette with a brand, I would only agree to do a collaboration if I had free reign of the colors, the formula as much as possible, the layout, the number of shades, everything like that. That's the only way I would agree to do a collaboration. And I kind of assume that that is the case here because according to what James has said, according to what Jacqueline said about collabing with Morphe, they, you know, allegedly, I guess you could say, they do give their people free reign. So they give their collaborators free reign, basically. So assuming that that's true, then we can take it to mean that James Charles created this palette knowing that the mattes had to be used a specific way, right? I mean, he created this palette knowing that and with that intention because that's what he wanted to create. And if that's the case, then I say more power to him. If that's the product that he wanted to create because he's an artist, he's a makeup artist. I mean, he's like one of the most talented makeup artists. Not the most talented, there's a lot of people that are talented, but he's extremely talented. And I'm sure he had a lot of like a vision and sort of, you know, desire for what he wanted this palette to be. So if that's the case, then I say more power to him. I think that it is amazing that he got to create what he wanted to create. And I think it's awesome that he told us in his video, you know, specifically like you have to use it this way. I think it's cool that he did that. That being said, I'm gonna go in with this darker purple here now. So that being said, I do think that Morphe had a responsibility to address the issue, especially since this is so similar in appearance to the Dare to Create and it's so different in formula. Again, you'll see that when I swatch them. It's like insane how different these palettes are in formula and yet how similar they are in the layout, and they're very colorful, and it's just interesting. So that fact that they're so similar in appearance, I think Morphe should have taken a little bit more responsibility for informing people that this is actually a different formula. Do you know what I mean? Morphe is, you know, they're the ones that created the palette, they're the ones that are marketing the palette, they're the ones that have to return people's money if people don't like the palette, which I assume that they're not going to take James Charles' check away, you know. So in the end, even logically, it makes sense that Morphe has that responsibility to do that, and they didn't really do anything. I haven't seen Morphe address the issue of, you know, this being a different formula, this having to be used a certain way. I haven't seen them address that issue at all, and that kind of frustrates me. It just makes me kind of look down on the brand of Morphe, you know? There have been some allegations, people, you know, rumors spread that this is just basically crappy shadows that Morphe is trying to unload, and they use James Charles' name. And I could see that being the case based on the quality of this, just based on all the facts that I have so far. I could see that. I'm not saying that I believe that. I don't want to believe that, so I'm not going to, but like, I could see that being possible. But I also, like, I don't know James Charles that well. Obviously, I don't know him personally, so I don't know if he would do something like that. I don't think that he would. I don't think any creator would knowingly agree to do that, you know? But Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. So I think the easiest way that Morphe could have solved this whole problem with how the shadows are supposed to be used is to include a primer with the palette. If they had included like a sticky primer, I don't know if Morphe has an eyeshadow primer, I honestly don't know, but if they had included one, that would have solved everything, because that would have given people what they needed to create the looks that they're supposed to create, to use the palette the way it's supposed to be used, and that would have, in my opinion, that would have solved the problem. So I think that that is what they should have done. Okay, my camera battery died and I zoomed out a little bit because I didn't like the angle I was at, so I'm just going to keep talking. So yeah, basically what I was saying is I just think that the whole problem would have been solved if Morphe had included the correct primer in this palette. I wouldn't have anything to complain about. I don't think anybody would, because then they would have everything they needed to create the looks that, you know, to use the palette the way that James Charles says you're supposed to. I'm just taking more of this pretty reddish shade and using that to buff out, and I don't know if you can tell or not, but I definitely feel like these don't, all of the shadows don't blend the same, which makes sense, because it makes sense that all of the matte shadows don't blend the same, because some of them are pressed pigments and some of them are actual eyeshadows, which just means they're different formulas. The pressed pigments are more pigmented and I guess have less fillers or something in them, so it makes sense that they're different. It's just a little bit frustrating. It makes the palette a little bit harder to work with, because some of the shades work just like other Morphe shadows, and then some of the mattes are totally different. I almost feel like another thing they could have done is to maybe label which one is a pressed pigment, so that we know going in exactly what we're working with. I'm sure that information is out there somewhere, but if it was on this palette, that would make things a lot easier. A lot of these like neutral matte shades and a lot of the matte shades are really easy to work with, but then there's just a few that are harder, and I feel like it's kind of a grab bag. When I'm doing my makeup, I don't know what's going to end up happening, and that makes it a little bit frustrating, so I wanted to put that out there. Alright, I'm going to go in with this matte purple again, and I just feel like going all out purple today. That's just how I'm feeling, so that's what I'm going to do. But another thing I wanted to say is I was actually talking to my sister-in-law about this, because she put this on her Christmas list. She wanted to get this for Christmas, and she was frustrated that it kept being sold out and stuff, and I was showing her mine, and I basically ended up telling her that I didn't think it was worth it. Like, I didn't think it was the best thing out there, which is how James Charles makes it sound. Like it's the best thing on the market, never been done before, brand new. First of all, everything's been done before. Second of all, this palette is beautiful, and I am glad that I have it, and I don't think it's like terrible and should be off the market, but it's not the best matte shadows, the best pigment. It's not the best matte rainbow palette or the best colorful rainbow palette with mattes and shimmers. It's just not. I have better ones and I'm sure there are other ones that I don't have that are better. And also, I don't think that this is a palette that would be good for beginners, and that's why I kind of told her that, because I'm not one to like bash stuff. I mean, especially if I have it, it kind of looks weird if I'm like, this is terrible, but I have it, you know, but like, I don't think this would be a good palette for beginners at all, or for anyone who's really not like a makeup artist like James Charles. I love to use color. I love to create creative looks. You may have seen my haul video where I had the green like winged liner or eyeshadow from this palette. I love to do looks like that, but if you're not someone who wants to do looks like that or is comfortable using makeup, I would not recommend this palette. I think this is going to be something that could actually turn people off from makeup in general, or from Morphe, or from James Charles. If they don't know what they're doing, they're gonna have trouble with this palette. I wouldn't recommend pressed pigments in general to a beginner, because they are harder to work with. So I don't think it was wrong of James Charles to make this palette or anything. I'm not saying anything like that. I think he should have done exactly what he wanted to do. But I don't think that this is a good palette for beginners, or really for the average makeup wearer. This is going to be specifically for people who are like makeup artists, creative people who love to wear color, and people who are more comfortable with their makeup skills in general. I'm going to take this light blue shade and see how that does on my inner corner. Another thing that I will kind of give you a spoiler for the swatches is that these shimmer shadows are not nearly as good as shimmer shadows in other Morphe palettes. like the Jaclyn Hill, both Jaclyn Hill palettes situations, the shimmers are better, and even the Dare to Create, even the Morphe 350, a few of these shimmers have that same metallic pop, but a lot of these shimmers are really disappointing. Like this blue one that I'm putting, it's a pretty color, but it doesn't have that metallic bam that I really love from Morphe's shadows for the price of their shadows. So that's something I've noticed. So if you're expecting that, not all of these shimmers have that, unfortunately. And again, maybe that was intentional, maybe that's what James Charles wanted to do, I don't know, but it was kind of disappointing to me. Alright, now I'm going to take this shimmery purple, which I believe this is supposed to be a pressed glitter. I don't really know. That's not even picking up. There we go. That picked it up a lot better. Okay, I'm going to try applying this with my finger and see what happens. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty, but it won't. Will it stick? Okay, that's beautiful. Let me just swatch this purple too by itself so we can see. Because it really doesn't carry that much pigment by itself. I mean, pressed glitters traditionally don't, but it's just interesting. It's like this kind of whatever, but then when I'm packing it over the purple, you can see this amazing like bluish glitter, and it looks absolutely beautiful. So that's kind of cool. I wish there was more shades kind of like this in the palette, just creative, like different things, you know? Maybe just a couple. Now I am going to take a little bit of a darker shade. I think I'm going to take this darker brown, this big one right here, and deepen up the corners a little bit more and kind of work on that shape. I'm going to mix it in with black actually. Okay, for the lower lash line, I'm going to take this dark matte purple and kind of line everything with it. Line my lower lash line with it. Right now I'm going to take this lighter purple and my BH Cosmetics fan eyeshadow brush, and I'm going to buff out this color. And I'm just packing a little bit more of that purple on top of the black and brown here just to kind of give it a purple tint, I guess. So when it comes to blending, these are not the easiest to blend of all the shadows that I own. They're not the worst either. These are definitely not going to be something that I will reach for when I have like really blended looks in mind. I see myself reaching for this palette more when I have kind of like that green look that I had where it's almost like one color. This is perfect for that, packing it on. And I do have to say too, with that green eyeshadow look, that lasted me all day. Like I don't remember even what I was doing that day, but I remember looking at myself when I was taking my makeup off thinking, holy cow, this still looks like perfect. Like it looks like I just applied it. So that is a huge plus. That is awesome with, you know, matte shadows. That doesn't always happen, so that's amazing. It looked amazing. It's just getting it on the face is the challenging part. Okay, I'm going to finish up my eyes off camera and I will be right back. Okay, so I just put on some Ardell 120 lashes and I lined my eyes with the Tarte Sex Kitten eyeliner, just my waterline, and then for mascara I have the Flower Beauty Lash Warrior mascara, and I'm actually going to go in with a little bit more from this palette. I'm going to go in with this shimmery light blue shade again and bring that down to my lower lash line a little bit. And then I'm going to mix that with this shimmery, not shimmery, this pressed glitter purple thing and see what happens. I really wish there was a shimmery purple in here. That would be nice. Yeah, because that's not even working. So let's just try the matte purple and see how that goes. That was a little bit difficult to work with I used this purple and I tried mixing it in with the shimmery light blue, and it was difficult to work with. I think it turned out okay. It looks really pretty, but I'm guessing that's one of the pressed pigments because that was really hard. It didn't want to blend in with the shimmer very well, so I'm guessing that was one of the pressed pigments that's just kind of their nature. Yeah, so let me finish off the look. Let's see. So for my lips, I'm just going to go in with this Bite Beauty matte lip crayon in the shade Glacé. And I'm going to mix in a little bit of chai. I do have a little bit of cream contour. I think I'm going to skip highlighter today because I've just been liking the sort of matte contoured look without shimmery highlighter. So I'm going to skip that, but I am going to do blush. This is just the ColourPop blush in the shade Weirdo. Okay, so my look is complete. It's really hard for me to say like a one-sentence summary of this palette because of all of the different factors to consider. I don't think this is as good as the Dare to Create palette, the original Dare to Create palette that came out in 2017. This is not as good as that. This is not as user-friendly. This is not as easy to work with. The color selection is amazing. The color selection is beautiful. If I had created the palette, I probably would have switched a few things around, but I'm sure everybody would do, if they had 39 shadows to play with, everyone would not pick the same ones. You know what I mean? Like, it would be whatever. So that's neither here nor there. I think overall he did a really great job with the color selection. Staying on the subject of the color selection, while it's definitely possible to get plenty of neutral looks, I wouldn't recommend this palette for somebody if they're looking for an everyday neutral palette. Even though you can get those looks, there's so many colors in here that you would just be wasting if you bought this, if you only want to do neutral looks, and I don't think this is the best selection of neutrals. A lot of these neutral matte shades are very warm tone, like they very much lean to the warm tone side. In the middle here, even these, like, I wouldn't even call these neutrals. This is like an orange and a yellow to me, so in that way they lean very warm. And then there's 3, maybe 4 matte shades that are actual neutral. So if you are someone who's like, okay, I want a palette where I can do lots and lots of neutral looks, everyday work, wearable looks, but then have some colorful stuff on the weekends, I don't think this is the best palette for you. I don't think you're going to get the best selection of neutrals in this palette, which I'm sure most people aren't buying this for the neutrals, but I just wanted to say that. If you are someone who is a beginner looking to get into color, you're looking to dip your toe into colorful eyeshadows and creative eyeshadows, I also don't think this is the palette for you. I think this is you're gonna find it challenging to work with, and I could see myself getting frustrated if I was a beginner. I am getting frustrated anyways. I just wouldn't recommend this for beginners. There's so many other palettes that I could recommend. I have these ones from BH Cosmetics. These are their eyes on the 60s, 70s, and 80s palettes, and I don't actually know if these are still available, so I probably shouldn't be mentioning them, but like, look at that. I mean, that's pretty much what this is, you know, like, you got your really bright rainbow shades, obviously all the shades are the same, but this is pretty much the same. The one thing that Morphe does better than a lot of other inexpensive brands is their metallic shimmers and their mattes. Their mattes are creamy and nice, but their metallic shimmers stand out, but there's not a lot of metallic shimmers in this palette. A lot of the shimmers are just kind of plain shimmers that are very comparable to what you would get in something like this, so I don't feel like they stand out in that way, whereas in the Dare to Create, the shimmers are bomb. Even the Jaclyn Hill Vault, those shimmers are bomb. It's the matte shades in the Jaclyn Hill Vault that I'm not crazy about, and I feel like it's very similar to this. They're harder to work with. So if you are a makeup artist like James Charles, if you are somebody who loves creative, colorful looks, then yes, by all means, you will get use out of this palette. If you are somebody who loves James Charles and you wanted to support him and you wanted to, you know, have something that he created, then yes, you should definitely get this palette. I think it would be worth it for that especially. I think that's like the #1 person I would recommend it to, are like fans of James Charles. If you watch his videos, you follow his looks, you want to support him, then yes, because it's not a bad palette. It's just you need to know what you're getting, and if you aren't familiar with James Charles, if you aren't familiar with pressed pigments, whatever, it might not be the best choice for you. Off the top of my head, I would recommend the Dare to Create is actually on Morphe website still, last time I checked. The original Jaclyn Hill palette, I would also recommend that one before this one. And then if you're looking for really good colorful palettes, Juvia's Place has some amazing palettes. Even ColourPop has amazing singles and palettes that you can get the colors for. They're just a little bit more workable. I don't want to say that, like, don't buy it. I'm definitely not saying that. I just am trying to give you like all of the information that I can think of, all of the facts that I can think of, so that you can make a decision for yourself. I don't see myself reaching for this that much, sadly. What I do see myself doing, I shouldn't say that, because what I do see myself doing is using this palette with the Dare to Create. I think this would make an amazing complementary palette. That being said, this many shades. This is a really big complementary palette. That's a really big palette too, so how often I'll actually do that, I mean, I need like a desk just to put the two palettes on, so I don't know how often I'll do that, but I could see these colors going really well together because that has more of the deeper like jewel toned and sort of like olive greens, almost like dusty shades, whereas this is the very bright, these ones are very bright, vibrant rainbow shades, so I think those two palettes would go together really well. This would probably make a really good complementary palette to a lot of other palettes just because there's so much in here, but it's just a matter of if you can get them to work the way you want them to. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot and I really do appreciate that. If you're not subscribed already, I hope that you will consider subscribing. I am working my way up to posting videos 3 times a week again. When 2019 hits, I have several months worth of videos planned already. I'm very excited and I have a lot of fun, different type of content. It's still going to be beauty related. Basically trying to utilize my collection and giving myself a bunch of challenges. I'm doing a low buy. I'm doing a bunch of fun stuff in 2019, so I hope you will subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you again very soon.